in this house by myself. Now, if you watch the manufacturing marketing materials, it looks pretty simple to install these systems. Basically, you put the condenser where it needs to go, you put the air handler where it needs to go, you run the pre-charge line set, hook them up, turn it on, and you're good to go. And essentially that is what you do, but it is a little bit more involved than that. So I wanted to take the time in this video to show you what the process was. In my situations, I'm not an HVAC professional by any means. And so take this video lightly. This is just how it's done. But I was able to install it myself, kind of. The first thing to point out here is when I opened up the manual for these products, one of the very first things it says, unit must be installed by a professional. So consider that when you install air conditioning systems, a lot of times you need special permits, you need to do electrical, you need to do ductwork, so there's a lot involved in it. So I'm going to show you how I did it all, and you can decide whether or not you think it's a DIY project or not. Now to start, I went ahead and I cut an access hole in the attic ceiling because I was going to need to run a new line set from the air handler to the outside condenser. So I cut a hole in the soffit for the outside as well, so we can run the new lines through the attic. So one of the first things I need to do before I even think about installing the new system is I got to get rid of the old system. Now, it's not just as simple as just ripping it out because you actually have refrigerant in the system and that needs to be discarded of properly. So in this case, I'm calling on a professional to help me get rid of the old refrigerant in this system. Then I can take all this out before we start the installation of the new AC system. Now, when I was deciding on what system I wanted, I was actually leaning on going towards like a mini split system because I thought that would be the most efficient. And I'll probably talk in a future video on why I chose this unit, but for the sake of this video, this seems like a highly efficient unit and it seemed like I'd be able to do the installation myself. Okay, so we have the old handler out. We just took it out. Now it's time to put the new one in, and it's very similar dimensions for the most part. It's a little bit taller than the last unit, and that actually causes some complications because I have to go from this and attach it to the new air handler, and it's going to require some custom metalwork and custom ductwork. Not my expertise, but it's something I'm just going to have to do. I think the base plenum box is going to work okay. I have to build up the top, so I got to figure that out now. And unfortunately, I think that means that we will not have AC for at least another day or two, and hopefully the weather is mild. This thing's super heavy, and I don't think I can handle it by myself. And I think it would just be better if it is as light as it can be. So I got to make any adjustments or anything, I can handle that. So what I'm trying to do now is just disassemble the majority of the air handler. I'm going to take this bar out. And I'm going to see if I can at least take out the coil assembly. Alright, that should lighten things up for us. So this is what they call the coil inside the air handler. Basically, air from the blower gets sucked through a hole under here, out through these vents, and then distributed throughout the house. So this is where the heat exchange happens to cool and or warm the house. Pretty critical piece. So this is still pretty heavy. I wouldn't recommend doing it by yourself. I called every neighbor I could try and no one was around, so, and I just gotta slide it in place. This in place. The next thing I do is seal it in with the metal tape. And one little trick is if this metal's cold, this stuff doesn't stick well, so it's a good idea to heat it up first. And here's a look at my duct transition. It's a little messy, but it should get the job done. So the way I have this set up is I have these aluminum blocks down here to mount it to. I have a piece of neoprene, which I just use some old like gym floor mat. Cut a piece of that off. And then I'm bolting through using some bolts I had around the house. They're stainless steel. I think they'll work okay for this situation, but essentially what I want to do is I'll put some washers in a nut on the bottom. I'll go through, I'll put this little rubber part here on top of the metal of the condenser unit here, and then this little rubbery thing here will separate the stainless steel from the regular steel. So I think that should work well and hold it down nice and snug. Next, I was ready to run the pre-charge line sets through the attic, and while I was doing this, I added some thermostat cable to go from the air handler to the new condenser. Now, since I'm just replacing the old handler, it makes it easy to reuse the power that's already there. So I just stick it in the machine, and then I have to attach it to the load inputs on the air handler. So in this case, I want to attach the copper wire to the ground screw, snug that down, and then I'm only running a 15 amp circuit here because I'm not running an auxiliary heater. So in this case, my white and my black wires are my load lines, and they go to the load screws. Now, before attaching the line sets, I have to attach these, I think they're check valves, and I torqued them down to what the instructions said in the manual. And I believe the smaller one was a little bit less torque, and the larger one was closer to 70 Newton meters. And then I did the same thing outside as well. I just hand threaded them at first, and then I torqued them down. And I try to be careful here not to put too much strain on the air condenser itself, so not to bend anything. And then to make sure the pipes fit, I went ahead and cut some insulation off to have easier access to maneuvering the pipes here.
Put this on. Hand thread it to start.
How to store and sort all your photos and videos in seconds.